How do you go from being an engineer to a carpenter to building props for people? It takes a long time, and I fell into it, like a lot of people do. I was very lucky. Essentially what happened was a friend of mine who's a huge Doctor Who fan asked me if I would build a TARDIS for him if he paid for the materials. And so I said, sure, why not? How hard can it be? So a few months later, we found out exactly how hard it is, and we had a TARDIS. And that was just before I moved down to Melbourne. And when I got down here from Brisbane, I was then asked almost immediately by somebody else if I could build a TARDIS in 3 weeks. And I said, sure, why not? How hard can it be? And that's kind of how it happened. From TARDISes, I went on to building other things, and initially I was just building basically what I wanted to have. I really wanted a Captain America shield, so I did some research and built myself a Captain America shield, and that was then displayed in an art gallery. Friends of mine at Art Boy put that up in one of their exhibitions, and it just went from there. I basically just wanted to build these things for me, really. And then word got out there, people started liking what I was doing and started asking me to build them for them as well. After that, it was just trying to keep up with the workload, really. Ever since, it's been about a year now, doing it full time, and I've got a list of projects I want to develop that are as long as my arm. But it all started with the TARDISes, moved on to the Captain America shield, and then here we are. What's it like when we go to conventions and people handle the gear? It's amazing. It's absolutely brilliant. We go to a lot of conventions and we go to galleries and exhibitions, and we take the things along. One of my main things, the underlying part of what I do, is I want them to look good, but I want them to feel better. When you pick the shield up or handle the hammer, I want it to feel right. I want you to know what you've got in your hand is the real deal. And we get a lot of families come along, and some of the reactions we get from the kids are amazing. They just go wild for it. They've never seen anything like it. Never did they ever think in their life they would hold Thor's hammer. Some of the reactions we get from the adults and the parents are exactly the same. 40, 50-year-old ladies and men holding Captain America's shield, something they'd dreamed of their entire life, and the smiles on their faces. We even had one lady cry, which wasn't on purpose. It was a good cry, but yeah, it's an astonishing thing to see people light up when they hold the stuff that I've made. It feels great. It is probably my favourite part of what I do. What I've started doing is I've started trying to make smaller items like orbs, or the police box signs, or the pull to open signs, or even a range of key rings that we've started as well, so that people can have smaller items and don't have to lay out the $1,000 it costs to get a shield. The orbs that we make are actually a solid resin cast orb, which is I hand sculpted to create the mould, which is a silicon mould, which we then pour with about half a kilo of resin and then spray up and buff in a silver. And again, they're not made of plastic and they're not light either. They have quite a weight in the hand. So when you pick them up, I'll often see people pick them up and be quite surprised at how heavy they are. I've just started slush casting helmets. There's going to be a list of helmets that I want to do, starting with a Captain America one. Some of the other things that are in development are supernatural angel blades, bat'leths from Star Trek, a Buffy the Vampire scythe. Let me just check the board out. Leather Captain America harnesses and belts for carrying your shield on. We do TARDIS DVD cabinets. I'm expected to know a little bit about TARDISes. And we do build them. We've built maybe 4 or 5 full-size TARDISes for people in the past, and I have my own which travels around with us. And we tend to try and take the TARDISes out to conventions, and we'll do the odd party or event or wedding, for instance. Apart from the TARDISes and the Captain America shields, of course I do the hammers, I do Mjolnir, but it isn't what you would see in a movie. It is my own take on Mjolnir. I'm a massive comic book Thor fan, and I wanted to have something that not only looked different but was a bit chunkier as well, and when you pick it up I wanted you to feel like it was made for a god. So I took a lot of reference from comic books, I took a lot of reference from movies and also from textbooks, and just came up with my own idea. I went through a massive process of getting to the point where I was happy with the shape, the weight, the feel, the materials involved, the processes, because I use a lot of industrial processes in my building methods. Mjolnir is a stainless steel, welded up, formed, laser cut box essentially, with a mild steel haft. It's wrapped in leather, hand wrapped in leather. It's got machine tooled parts on it for the pommel and for the collet around the base of the haft. The actual head of the hammer, which is a stainless steel form, is heat treated by me by hand, and I went through several processes to get the right finish, because I wanted it to look a little bit unusual, like almost it had been forged in the heart of a dying star. And each one, because of that process, is absolutely unique. Each one differs, they all look slightly different, and it's a really nice way for me to pour into them some of, without wanting to sound too pretentious, some of my art. Mjolnir, the hammer, is finished with some laser etching, and people get a choice of what goes on there. But essentially they have a choice of the "whosoever should hold this hammer" quote, or the triquetra, which is a three-pointed curved triangle type etching, which was in the movie. And also there's the etching on the bevel, the scroll work on the bevel of the hammer head. And these are all things that I think that the piece comes alive when the etching's done, and it's the last thing that's done. The etching on the edge is probably my favourite piece, the scroll work, because it was an original piece of artwork commissioned by myself from a Melbourne-based artist called Laura Herman, and I asked her to design a representation of Yggdrasil, the world tree. And if you look closely on the hammerhead, you'll see that the scroll work on the bevels is it has 9 little life flowers in it, and each one of those represents one of the realms on the world tree, the centre one being Midgard. And I feel that piece of original artwork really tops the whole thing off. And essentially these are engineered on. The whole thing is engineered together. It will never fall apart. It is not a toy. It's definitely a display piece. And even the strap that goes through the top of the handle is riveted in place inside the haft of the hammer. So you could, if you really wanted to, swing it around. I wouldn't recommend it. It weighs about 5 kilos and you break your wrist. But if you were a god, maybe. How does the shield get to be the shield? How does it transform from just a piece of aluminium and get to be actually Captain America's shield on your hand? Again, engineering processes. We start off with a 3mm piece of aluminium, which is then placed on a very large spinning machine. It's a 3mm hand-spun dome, which is brushed, and the blank is then taken by me, and we have I go through a process of etch priming the aluminium, ground coating it, and then finishing it with enamel spray. The battle damaged ones have a little bit more, well, a lot more work in it. And the reverse of the shield is actually 3mm aluminium laser cut brackets, which I hand bump and hand form into the shape of the dome, and then we apply the leather work to the back of that as well. The shields themselves, when they're on the stand and people see them at conventions, look pretty, they look lovely, but as I said, it's when you hold them that you really get the feel they come alive, and you get the idea of how nice they are. The reverse of the shield that often people like more than the front, which is a strange thing to say, but the leather work on the back and the way it's finished on the back. It's not a direct representation or replica of what's in the movies, it's my own take on it. But I've made it so that you could hold it and run around with it. And they do look nice, the straps do look nice, people do love the fact that it's finished well on the back and it looks as good at the back as it does at the front. What I tend to do is I will clean the shield off with some acetone, make sure it's grease free, make sure it's ready to take the masking tape. And then I'll put a very fine line tape around all of the rims, which is designed for masking off in curves. And that gives me an absolutely perfect line when the paint goes down with absolutely zero bleed underneath. There's different variants of the Captain America shield as well. The standard clean shield, which is a red and blue, is probably the most popular because it looks lovely on a wall. There's the battle damage shield as well. Battle damage shield looks like it's been shot at and burned and it's been through, looks like, you know, towards the end of the movie when he's had a bit of a beating. And we do a blue stealth one, which was at the very beginning of the Winter Soldier. And then there's the custom ones as well. We've done a Deadpool shield, which went down very well amongst the Deadpool community, including Rob Liefeld, the creator. He liked it. And we've done a Dr. Fate one. And I've been asked to do another Deadpool one. I've got a Spider-Man one coming up and a few others as well.